Oh, are you live on YouTube?
No, I don't think so.
It says live on YouTube.
Oh, right. Maybe it's been recorded.
Okay.
So it's been recorded because some people have not been able to make the Zoom meeting, so they've asked for me to record it. So it's not on. It's not. If it's been recorded on YouTube, there's not an audience there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Yeah, no, I noticed your clients include Lorene Cato and I think Angela Marr Productions. Is that the Take Me Back gospel?
Yeah. Yes. So I worked on that as well. Did you go and see it?
I didn't know, but people from my church went along to see it.
Okay.
I think well, maybe because it was repeated. It was at one venue and then it went to a.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because you've got Anne Vaughan in your congregation, haven't you?
That's correct. She's joining you tonight. Oh,
right. Okay. Because she normally comes. I do an event called the Destined to Soar Women's Ministry Breakfast. So she normally does that. She normally comes.
Okay.
With her PCU hat on, not her Gospel Temple hat on.
Ah, right. Yeah, it was her that mentioned you to us. So that's why we're.
Okay. Where's your church based?
On the End.
Okay. Out in the sticks. Okay, Ronnie's in, Diane's in. Hi, Diane. Hi, Anne. So I'm getting used to this Zoom thing. Oh. Hi, Diane. Hi, Pastor Matthew and Kelvin. It's not Pastor Matthew Ashimawolo. Hi, Joan. Good evening, everyone. I'm saying it again.
Good evening, Marcia.
Hi. Oh, hi, Anne. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. God bless you.
I've just been speaking to Jason.
Hi there.
Hi. Who's that? Who's saying hi? Oh, hi, Joan.
Hi there.
Hi, Joan is Joan, who's on this Zoom meeting. She's actually working for the NHS. So we got to give a round of applause for our NHS workers.
Oh,
and she's a minister as well.
I'm fighting at the front line at board level, so sorting out the PPEs and all the disproportionate development with BMEP to everything. Yeah.
May the Lord be
very
with
busy.
you. May the Lord be with you.
Thank you.
I was saying to Jason that this is my third Zoom workshop that I've been really excited about sharing about PR because I've worked in media for ages. And one of the reasons that I set up my PR company was that I'm still at The Voice, but in my younger years working at The Voice, the church has never really fully used The Voice in terms of promoting what they do and who they are. So I thought, let me help by setting up this PR company. But I still think that churches don't really get how important PR can be to help them grow what they do and publicize what they do and share the gospel. So I'm just hoping that this workshop will spread some light on that and just enlighten you as to how, as churches and people who run ministries, how you can kind of utilize PR to be more effective in terms of reaching your goals and objectives.
Thank you.
Right, there's just a few more people to come, and then when they come, I will start. And when I start talking, if you don't see the slides, I don't know if you can see the slide that says, okay, that's good. That's good. If it doesn't move, let me know, because that's what happened to me the last time. I am not a techie. I am not a techie.
I would never believe that.
I'm not a techie at all. I'll be starting in about 3 minutes. So I hope you've got your pens and papers. I'm becoming like a preacher now. You can just kind of talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. I used to really dislike interviewing preachers because they never stop talking. Hi, Claudette.
Hello.
Hi.
I'll see you, right?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, preachers, they can't help it. It's just a blah, 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 blah. But God has given you a word. Sorry, I'm kind of...
Get my pen and paper.
But yeah, preachers, you can't help it, innit? It's your gift to talk, to preach, to teach, to speak. And I'm getting that anointing on me. No, I'm joking.
Well, the mantle is falling. There's a mantle that has been released
Oh, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Receive it.
Dear. It's been fun working with preachers, actually, because they tend to be, the ones that I've met tend to be very wise people, have a good understanding of the human psyche, and they do a really good job. I don't know where a lot of our community would be if it wasn't for our churches and the preaching that we hear and the messages that our ministers share. You know, they really do help to kind of build us up spiritually as a people who live in a nation or in a world that does not particularly like black skin. So they really do have an important role to play, and I'm proud of the fact that I'm part of the church and have been since I was 15, and that I've sat under really great church leaders. And my first pastor was a woman. I think women are wonderful.
Yeah.
That's helpful to know.
No, it was my first pastor was a woman. Her name was Pastor Io Smith. And what was really great about her was that, you know, she was very dynamic. She played a really major role in putting the church she was part of, the New Testament Assembly, on the map. But she was also very community minded. So I actually became a Christian when I went to the summer vocational Bible school that she used to run for children for 4 weeks. You know, we used to go do activities, get fed. And, you know, in the midst of that, after it had finished, there was usually a crusade, I think, if I remember correctly, and I got saved, converted in that. But the vocational Bible school was a really great introduction to church and stuff like that, and very practical as well. And she set up a home for the elderly as well, 2 care homes. So, you know, great lady. Right, I'm going to get ready to start. So
Williams, is he on there?
Who?
Goodison Williams.
Right, okay, I'm not a techie, but I'm going to check through the names. Goodison Williams, yes he is.
Great. Oh, he's not showing his face then.
Okay, that's what I do when I log on. I don't show my face.
Okay.
So I have to today, yeah. So I'm gonna start. I really hope that you get a lot from this session. I've had a lot of experience, so feel free to put up your hand in however you put up your hand on Zoom, to ask me questions, because I'm here to share. You know, I want you to leave this session with some tools that you can use and apply to, you know, wherever you're serving the Lord. Jenny's raised her hands. What's your question, Jenny?
Might be muted.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I put my hand up. Yeah.
All right, Jenny.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a question?
Yeah, I'm just a bit concerned that you've got 38% on your battery life left. I don't know if you want to charge up your...
Well, I've got 38, I'll be fine. My battery's
You'll be okay?
here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Right,
if I see it going down to 5, then it's just here below.
Okay, no worries. Okay.
All right, any other, there was one other person. Okay, yeah.
We just have to make notes ourselves, or will you be, are you going to send things to us?
Well, you should have received, I've sent you a workbook.
Yeah.
Which gives a bit of an outline, and I've also sent you a proposal that I've actually done myself for you to give an idea. I don't really give out my notes, but if there's anything particular in them that you would like, I can send you that information, not a problem. Is that okay?
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, all right then. Well, I'm going to start now. So this session is called PR for Churches and Ministries. Before I kind of go into, you know, what I've got to share, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a Christian since the age of 15. And I've been to several churches. I've been a member, don't hate on me, but I've been a member of the New Testament Assembly, which is a church that I got saved in. I am the founder of MD Public, the churches that I've been to include New Testament Church of God, the Wesleyan Holiness Church.
So, Marcia,
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but could you ask everybody to mute, because I can hear all the rustling in the
Yeah,
background.
please, can you please mute yourselves? Please, because I can hear rustling. Right, okay. Right, okay. Let me go back. Like I was saying before. So I've been to several churches. I've been to New Testament Assembly, Wesleyan Holiness Church, New Testament Church of God, Christian Life City, Kingsway International Christian Center, and I'm currently at the Ark. And it is quite a lot of churches, but what's really good is that they've all served to inform me in terms of the work that I currently do. And almost all of the churches that I attended were churches that were growing churches. So I went to churches where a lot of people were getting saved and converted, and the churches were growing. The largest out of all those churches was Kingsway International Christian Center. I'm the founder of MD Public Relations. I've been a religious columnist at The Voice for over 20 years. I was a former editor of Keep the Faith magazine, which is the largest and most popular magazine about Britain's Black faith community. I'm the founder of a women's breakfast and Facebook group called Destined to Soar Women's Ministry Breakfast. I used to run, alongside Roy Francis, the brother of Bishop John Francis, a series of seminars for gospel artists called Pathways to Music Ministry Success. I used to organize the Wise Women Awards. I'm a recipient of the Inspirational Woman of the Year Award, and I'm a recipient of a Legacy Award for my service to the faith community. My former clients have included Psycho Music, which is a company run by Simon Cowell, Sony Music, NHS, YMCA, Street Pastors, BET, Wise Women Awards, Metropolitan Police, Redeemed Christian Church of God, and Church of God in Christ. So I've worked for a wide range of individuals, and I thank God for that. What is PR? This is how I define PR, and PR is about communicating who you are and what you do to your target audience. I believe that there is a biblical imperative to do PR, and by PR I mean communicating what you're about, whether it's your message, your charity, your church, or whatever. And I'm just going to read from Matthew 5:14, which says, "You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father." I know as Christians, sometimes we're not too keen on publicizing what we do, and quite rightly so. But the Bible does also say we have got to let our light shine, which is our deeds, our behavior, what we say, the message we share. And we've got to find effective ways of doing that. And then the other scripture that for me says to me that as Christians we should do PR is Romans 10 verse 14, which states, "But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news." But I will stress, how can they call on him to save them if they've never heard about him? So as Christians, we've got a message to share, and we've got to find ways to share it. Obviously, the church is one of the instruments that God uses on this earth to share his gospel and his word, and to look after those or disciple those that respond to the message. Is there evidence of PR in the Bible? Forgive me, because I might be kind of stretching it a bit, but PR, remember, PR is all about communicating. It's about finding your target audience and sharing that message. And we know that the Apostle Paul is responsible for writing much of the theology in the New Testament via his epistles. Now, it's quite evident in the book of Acts that when the Apostle Paul visited a town or a city, he would go to the central place, which in those days was the town square, to preach, because he knew that everybody would be there. And once he spoke, he knew that the people who were there would go and tell other people what they heard. The town square. Social media is the modern day town square. Back in the Bible days, as they say, the town square was the town square. The Apostle Paul also used letters to communicate with the churches. Apparently, at that particular time, letter writing was a new form of communication, which Paul utilized. He utilized it, and we can read those letters today because what he wrote has been handed down, replicated, and printed in a book called the Bible. God himself, the creator of the universe, has used the Bible, the written word, to communicate who he is to the world. And we in turn take that word, which tells a story of God, Jesus, and salvation, and communicate it to our world. So that's for me. You might disagree, but I just thought I'd put it out there that, you know, there is PR in the Bible. The Bible is a tool of communication, and within the Bible, people have used communication tools to share whatever message that they had to share. One of my favorite interviews working as a journalist, this was when I was I did this piece for Keep the Faith, was interviewing Bishop T.D. Jakes. Interviewing him was like talking to a dad, a very wise dad, a very understanding dad, a very caring dad. But it wasn't even that he was like talking to a dad. It was that Bishop Jakes gets what he's about. He's a communicator. He's a communicator of the gospel. He's a communicator in terms of sharing Christian values when he actually talks and preaches. And he said to me, Marcia, I want to reach people wherever they are. If they go to conferences, I want to reach them. If they attend church services, I want to reach them. If they're on social media, I want to reach them. If they read newspapers, magazines, which is called described as traditional media, I want to reach them. If they watch films, if they go to movies, I want to be there. If they read books, I want to write books for them. If they watch TV, I want to do a TV show. And we know that T.D. Jakes has done all of those things. His conferences, whether for women, for leaders, for security, are well attended. His church services, they're broadcast on TV and social media. He's got a strong social media presence. He's regularly featured in the news. Apparently just the other day, he was asked to pray live on air on, I think it was NBC, and people were quite surprised because, you know, church leaders are very rarely called on to pray on national TV. But obviously, COVID has got a lot of people praying. And when he was on the program, the reporter asked him to pray. He's on film, he's on books, he's on TV show. He's a Christian who is communicating to the world. That's why he is one of the most well-known church leaders. Now, I'm not saying we're all going to be like T.D. Jakes, but God has given all of us a sphere of influence. God has given us people whose lives we can touch, we can impact. There's people that we meet at work where our church is based, where we worship, or whether we run a ministry, and we've got to find a way to communicate with them and communicate effectively. And I think Bishop T.D. Jakes is just a great example of somebody who's using everything to communicate. And whilst we may not be able to do that on his scale, we can all find ways to communicate, do our PR. so that we can reach other people. PR, like I said, it's a tool for communication, and devising a PR strategy and implement it can do a lot for your church or your ministry. It can help to raise awareness of your church, your ministry, your events. You can use it to grow your church membership, attendance at your services, take up of ministry services. And by that, if you run a ministry, you might do counseling, you might run a food bank, etc. Utilizing PR to promote that can encourage more people to use the services that you provide. PR can help with fundraising campaigns and helping you to raise finance for what you do. It can help you to build relationships with your target audience. It can, PR, if done well, can make you an influential church or ministry or thought leader in your field. And it can enable you to impact your local community and the wider world. So here's some things that you might, possible goals and objectives you might want to utilize PR for. You might want to use it to reach new audiences, to promote your projects, events, etc. Spread the gospel. That really should have been put first, forgive me. You might want to use it to change the behavior of your congregation. You might want them to have different attitudes. You might want them to, you want to raise funds. You might want to decide when you're devising your PR strategy that you want to have better relationships with your local council, your borough council, local MP. You can even use it to actually build relationships internationally. It's not impossible to do that utilizing PR. Right, I've disappeared. There I am. Whenever I talk about PR, I do not negate the importance of prayer, because obviously as believers, as Christians, as leaders, as ministry leaders, everything that we do, everything that we plan to do should be undergirded by prayer. And these are some of the prayer points that you might want to consider. You might want to pray for vision. You might want to pray for more faith. I was reading an article of a minister the other day called Tommy Barnett, who is part of the Assemblies of God in America, and his church, he used to run a conference for leaders. He's now 82, he's written a book, and he said he has very few regrets in his life, but when he looks back on his life, he wishes that he had dreamed bigger. He wishes that he had taken more risks for God and trusted God to do amazing things. And I'm putting it out there, you know, what are you trusting God for? What are you hoping that he will do with your ministry? Do you think that maybe your plans for your ministry are too small? Because that could indeed be the case. So, you know, pray for vision, pray for faith, pray for foresight, pray that God will bring opportunities, pray that God will enable you to dream big dreams. Because it's, even for myself, sometimes it's quite easy to just kind of settle with the status quo, when maybe sometimes God is calling us out to say, look, you know, you've got 50 people and I want you to have 200 people. You know, there's 200 souls out there that I want you to believe me for. Or, you know, there's 200 people out there that I want you to believe that you can help through your ministry services. Or he might be saying, look, you know, you've got your church plant in Walthamstow. I want you to plant churches across the UK. You know, so prayer is important. The Bible says that if we have the faith of, if our faith is like a mustard seed, we can say to the mountain, be thou removed, and it can be moved. Say to the mountain to move, and it can be done. Right, I had the pleasure of many years ago now, gosh, I think I was five at the time, you know, I was an exceptional child, no, not really. I had the pleasure of working with Pastor Matthew Ashimawolo, who in my view changed the game when it came to church in the UK. Because in 1998, Pastor Matthew Ashimawolo, the founder of Kingsway International Christian Centre, opened a 4,000 seater church called the Miracle Centre in Hackney. It was a historic moment because it was the first church to open in the UK for 100 years. And I was part of the PR team that worked with that. The company was called CMR Media. And I was working on this account. So we sent out the press release by fax, because social media wasn't invented in those days. And as soon as that press release hit the desk of journalists, the phone rang non-stop, because they all wanted to find out who was this Nigerian minister who had come to Britain, which everybody was saying was a church where people weren't getting saved and weren't interested in church that is attracting force. I went to that church and it did attract 4,000 people every week for quite a while, and it was a really, really great church. And what was good about the PR that church, that KICC got, was that it made people realize that the church was alive and kicking, and that's all people, black, white, whatever. Because Pastor Matthew used to have various people of all ethnicities and nationalities wanting to meet him to find out his secret. I personally believe that Hillsong, which is a growing denomination, got some of their tips from some of the tips on how to do church from observing the success of Pastor Matthew Ashimawolo. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. And what was also really good about him in terms of the PR that he got was the fact that because he was trying to make Christianity relevant through the messages and the expression of Christianity, it encouraged young people who had left church to come back to church. Now, I am going to kind of put it out there that I think that SPAC Nation, which is led by a guy called Pastor Toby, is a kind of KICC of this time in this regard, in the sense that they have utilized media. In their case, actually, they've got a PR person. They've utilized media, social media, and then they ran a PR campaign to shine a spotlight on what they were doing. And the more media that they got, the more young people were encouraged to attend their church. So they were having attendance of 1,000 people, I believe. Now, some of us may know that they kind of steered off the path a little bit, but they are a good example in this regard, that they worked their PR in order to reach their target audience. We pray that the church will get back on track, but they utilize PR to reach young people that some people had given up on and stuff. So I would say that SPAC Nation is a kind of a modern day, the operative word, modern day KICC, because they utilize PR. So what's your strategy as a church leader, as a ministry? Do you want to raise your profile? Do you want to grow your church? Do you want to promote what you're doing? What's your strategy? What's your plan? Any questions before I go on? Okay, any questions? I'll just continue. So the components of your PR strategy, I mean, I sent out a PR plan, so it would give you a rough idea of the kind of things that you'll need to do when you're compiling your strategy. Is that you need to know the objectives, what it is that you want to achieve. You need to know your target audience, who are the people you want to reach. And you need to have a method, your methodology, your PR tools that you're going to use to achieve your objectives. Oh, what's happened there? Oh dear. Right. And the PR strategy that you implement will be very much dependent on your time, your manpower, and your budget. You know, the good thing about churches is that because of the way that you have your regular meeting, you meet once a week or in the week, you know, you've got a steady stream of income coming into your church, and you can decide how much of that you want to allocate to your PR. So you will have something to work with, or you know, you might be lucky to have rich people in your congregation. You know, God might drop something in your heart, and you know, you might have somebody in your congregation who you can go and talk with and say, this is what I believe God has called me to do. Would you like to support us in that? You know, because God is raising up, I believe he's raising up a generation of business owners, some of whom have got funds and some of whom desire to use their money for kingdom business. You know, let's pray that, you know, your church, your ministry gets somebody like that who joins your congregation or supports your ministry. So the PR strategy you decide on and you implement will be very much dependent on the time. So, you know, you might have a very short campaign, like for me, working on promoting this Zoom workshop. I had basically 4 days to do that. But there's other things. I was working on a PR campaign which had to be stalled because of COVID-19 for an organization called the Pentecostal Credit Union. And that was going to span 6 months. The first event should have taken place in March, which was going to be a reception at the House of Commons. And next month, we were due to have a service at St. Martin's in the Field, which was to celebrate the 40th anniversary in that iconic church. And in June, we were due to have a banquet. But, you know, all of that was a 6 months campaign. And the team of us working on it, the core team was 4 people, and we had quite a sizable budget. But I've worked on things where I've had no budget and I've got really, really good results. So money's not always necessary, but if you have it, you can just put together a better looking campaign. Oh, right, I'm going to leave this one out. I want to use a church. It's a church I currently go to, but I think that it provides a great example of where you can take your church through prayer and, you know, taking a few risks and whatever. So I've been going to Ark Church for 7 years. Prior to going to that church, Ark Church in Forest Gate, the pastor is Pastor Peter Nembard. If any of you are on social media, you will know that he was in hospital recently, suffering from COVID, and a call went out for people to pray for him, which they did, and he's now out at home recuperating. He's the senior pastor of a group of 6 churches. So when I started going Ark Church in Forest Gate 7 years ago, like I said, I had met Pastor Peter before previously, I believe in 2008, but I can't remember. I had interviewed him because tragically a member of his teenage member of his church died tragically. She was murdered actually at a party. She was stabbed at a party. So what happened was that that incident caused Pastor Peter to focus on reaching young people. The congregation was about maybe and I remember interviewing him. It was a great interview. So after the death of that member, he started working a lot with young people. Used to get quite a number of young people. But in general, when I started going, the church was a normal church, multi-generational church, had young people, had older people, and there was a lot of middle-aged people. What began to happen is that the church began to pray intentionally for growth. And they also had a couple of times where ministers came and prophesied that the church would grow and that God would bring an influx of people. Now, the picture below is, it's not the greatest picture, but the inside of our church used to be very dark. You know, we had pews, it was brown, dark wood. So whilst I loved the church and I loved the preaching, visually it was not the nicest place in the world. But you know, as Christians, we go because it's not so much about the building, we go because of the people and the spiritual nourishment and support that we get. And what happened was that our church, my pastor got the vision to renovate the building. The picture at the top gives a little bit of the, gives a glimpse of what the renovation looked like. We had new chairs put in, you could see downstairs, the staging looked nice and everything. And we renovated the building and we made a PR event out of it. So we got some press coverage for it. And we also had a grand opening. What the church also did, and so, sorry, let me go back a bit. So we had the grand opening, we had the renovation, and I don't know what, sorry, I've been in churches where, attended churches where they've just kind of grown. And it's just like, the church had a focus on young people, but all of a sudden we just started getting these young people from everywhere. So like people like me, who's not that young anymore, I'm starting to think, oh my God, I'm surrounded by all these 20 somethings, because literally now we've got about 60% of 60% of our attendees are under 30, I would say. We're having baptisms like every 3 weeks. Young people are coming in and they are getting saved. So they're coming in and getting saved because we're praying, we've had special events. Our church heavily uses social media to promote our activities. We've got a photographer. You've got to remember, if you want to reach the younger generation, they are the social media generation. They're into pictures, they're into selfies, they're into videos. So it's really important that if you want to attract them, that you use that. We put clips of our services on social media. And you should know, in the church community, a lot of information about which church is hot and which is not spreads word of mouth as well. We also broadcast our services live. So in this kind of social media age, if you're a church, maybe you can do for a ministry, but definitely for a church, it's worthwhile considering broadcasting your services live. Because what will tend to happen is that you will have your congregation of real life people who come to your church and sit on the chairs, but then you'll also have this online community of people who love what you do at your church. For them, your online, watching you online, you have become their church. They take on board what you say as a preacher, as a teacher. So you can expand the reach of your congregation. Your congregation now does not just have to be the bodies that come to your church building. It can also be people from across the world. So we've had people, I remember one instance where a young lady, she wanted to come to London and she got in contact with the Ark because she'd been watching the Ark online. So she came over to London, I think it was for her birthday. She hooked up with some of the young people from the Ark and they took her on a tour of London. She saw the Ark as her church. She saw it as a base that she could touch base with and connect with the young people and have a good time over here. And then she's gone back to America. So I know that a lot of churches are now online because they've had no choice. They're using Zoom or Team or conference calling. But I do think it's really worthwhile giving thought as a church, as part of your PR strategy, giving thought to your online activity. Because a lot of people are consuming stuff online and it makes sense for the church to be online. In fact, this whole lockdown has been kind of quite good because it's given churches, you know, people have no excuse not to go to church anymore, have they? Because they can go on their computer. Have any of you out there been church hopping on your computers? No? Okay. So Ark Church now has, Jenny's got a raised hand. Hi, Jenny.
I was gonna say I've been church. Oh no, I
Yeah,
was just gonna say I've been church hopping. I've been going from one to the other.
And how have you found it?
You know what? I found it quite good because usually I just stick to one. But because we're now in this climate, I've been going around, and it's quite interesting to see the kind of things that churches are using to be able to keep people online and to get people coming back. So I found it quite good. I found it interesting.
Yeah, I think it's the way. I think it's the way to go.
Yeah.
It definitely is the way to go. Let me see if I can get unmuted. Right. Okay. So the PR tools. I'm going ahead of myself. The PR tools that you can use. If you've attended my workshop before, you'll have heard this before. But there's so many tools that you can use. You can use, you know, TD Jakes listed some of them. I listed some of them in terms of what TD Jakes uses, but you can use bios, leaflets. I mean, leafleting is a very popular thing amongst us as Christians. You know, we're always giving out leaflets or using e-flyers to promote our activities. But there's other things that you can do in terms of your PR and promoting, finding ways to communicate what you're about in terms of utilizing events. You know, as a church, we have a whole calendar of events that we put on. Receptions can be, well, churches don't really put on launches, but sometimes we do if we've got members in our congregation who've recorded an album or released a book. Obviously, there's church services. We have conferences, convocations, anniversary celebrations, and these can all be good ways, good means of, you know, utilizing those platforms to reach our target audience, reach new people. You know, there's the whole thing about getting our stories in the media. You know, like I alluded to before, you know, KICC entered the consciousness of the public through the media coverage in all kinds of media, national media, religious media, ethnic media, TV media as well. I remember Sky TV sent a broadcast van down so that they could broadcast live. Was it Sky or ITV? I can't remember now, but so they could broadcast live from the Gathering of Champions, where the church was officially launched. There's media relations in terms of press releases, can do videos, your own videos, not so much DVDs now. I need to take that off, and CDs. And then there's the whole thing about internet, you know, what's your website like? Do you use blogs? Have you collected the names and addresses of the people who visit your church or your ministry initiatives and compiled a mailing list, because you can use those to communicate with people? If you're a church and a ministry, run a ministry, everyone who utilizes, you should be taking down the details of everybody who utilizes, who visits your church. You know, you should take their details, their phone, their email address, and you should be corresponding to them. As if they're new visitors, you should be corresponding with them, you know, within 2 or 3 days of them visiting your church. You should get permission from them when you take down their details to add them to your mailing list so that they can receive information from your church. Obviously, you've got to make sure you're GDP or GPR compliant. But, you know, emails, blogs, websites, they are important tools of communication. All churches, I believe, should have a website, definitely. All churches, all ministries should be on social media. You know, forgive me, I have not got a website. I do need to get a website, but I'm just kind of dithering over, you know, what kind of website I should have. I am on social media. There's lots of people that are on social media that don't have a website. I personally feel that's okay if you run a ministry, but I don't think it's a good thing not to have a website if you're at a church. And obviously everybody's having to utilize social media during this lockdown because it enables them to reach their audience and stuff. But if you're a church and you don't really give much thought to your social media, I think you should start doing so, particularly if you want to reach the younger generation. In fact, everybody's on social media these days, young and old, and there's statistics saying that more and more old people, they call them silver surfers, are going online.
Marcia?
Yeah?
I was just thinking myself, I'm on other people's mailing lists and they keep in touch with you regularly. You know, maybe once a week, once a fortnight, they're sending you a message, inviting you to join in some webinar that they're running, buy various books. So it's almost like a full-time job doing the PR for a church, would you say?
Not really. I mean, not really, because you can, you know, if you can say, for instance, you have your mailing list, for instance, like I've got a mailing list. I used to do what I call an infomail, where I send out information to the people on my mailing list. And I used to do it every week. I've stopped doing that now. It's a much more infrequent, but it shouldn't really take that much time, because it also depends on what information that you're sending out. So it just might be, you might just be sending out a general bulletin, which will just list every week the events that your church is going to be putting on, or any appeals that you need to make. It might take you about maybe half a day to compile that, check it out, and then send it. So it's not a full-time job per se when you're a smaller church. Maybe when you become a bigger church, you know, you've got 800 people, 1,000 people, then your church, you will have the funds to employ people or hire people to do certain activities full time. And obviously, the more people you have, the more departments you have, the more people that you have to keep in contact with. So yes, by the time your church grows to a certain point, it most probably would be a full-time job, but not when you're starting out. I actually went to Pastor Matthew's church. I interviewed Pastor Matthew when he had a small office under Barking Bridge. I don't know if any of you know East London at all, but he had a small office under Barking Bridge. And when I met him, he hadn't started KICC. I mean, he hadn't opened the Miracle Centre then. But when I met him, he had this small office, and little did I know that maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, that he would be opening his 4,000-seater church. Now, I'm not saying that you should aim to build a 4,000-seater church. You know, if you're a small church, that's absolutely fine. But what I do think is important for any church, whatever size you are, is that your church should be growing. The Bible does talk about God adding to churches daily. So if you're leading a church and it's not growing, i.e. people are not getting saved, then I think it's very important to explore the reasons why, because we are called to make fishers of men. We are called to preach the gospel. We are called to see people turn to Christ. So if that's not happening under your ministry, I think it's important to kind of ask some questions about what it is, what you're doing. Do you need to change what you're doing? Maybe it's time to do something else. I don't know, but I do think that churches should be growing. The people should be getting saved, and the members of your church should be growing spiritually so that they can be released to do whatever it is God has called them to do. Like I said earlier, when I talked about Paul going to the town square, social media has become one of the major town squares of our time. You know, someone earlier, Jenny earlier said that, you know, during this lockdown, she's been, inverted commas, church hopping online, doing online church hopping. And she's been doing the church hopping on social media. So you can be on Facebook, watching one service and then go to the page of another person to see their service, or you can do that on YouTube. But it is apparent that people are on social media. I've just listed here the amount of people that are on these respective social media platforms. I'm quite happy to send out this information if you want it, but you can Google it as well, and it will bring it all up. But on Facebook, there's 2.5 billion people. Twitter, 330 million people. Instagram, 1 billion people. YouTube, 1.8 billion people. LinkedIn, which is a professional social media platform, it's got 675 million people. Snapchat, where you can do mini stories, they've got 219 million people. It's very much aimed at young people. WhatsApp, which is a social media tool, I used it to promote this event. It's got 1.5 billion people. And TikTok, which is a new social media platforms, got 800 million people. You have to be, if you're a church or a ministry, you have to be on at least one social media platform. There's no way you can be doing work for the Lord, in my opinion, my humble opinion, and not be on social media these days. It's imperative that you are on social media. And when you are on social media, you utilize that platform to communicate with prospective audiences or the people on there, because it's a tool to help you build relationships with people online. Why should you use social media? You can, when I use the word church, you know, if you run a ministry, interchange it with ministry. You can connect with and build your church audience. You can broadcast live events. You can share information about church events or share even the testimonies of people within your church. You can build an online community. You can communicate in real time. It's an inexpensive way to promote your products and services and events, and it's free. The only cost is your time. So I'm just going to use an event that I put on as a ministry event as an example. I run an event called Destined to Soar Women's Ministry Breakfast. I get between 50 to 70 people currently attending, but I really do want to increase the number of people that attend. I use social media. My main platforms I use are Twitter and Facebook to actually promote my event. I normally get an e-flyer done. Doesn't cost me very much to do that. And I just, and I pay for sponsored boosted posts. So I pay about 40 quid altogether and my e-flyer. And I utilize social media by posting information about my event to attract the audience. What I also do when the event is actually taking place is that I use my phone to broadcast little clips from the breakfast, because I have quite good speakers come to speak at my event. Now, what's been really good about my doing that is that when I've gone to promote subsequent events, I've been able to use the things that the live broadcast that I did using my phone. Obviously, if you're a church and you want to do live broadcasts, I personally think it's worthwhile talking to somebody who understands about video and photography and camera work and stuff, because, you know, people are going to stop by your church and they're going to judge it by the content in terms of how good it looks. I'm talking visually, but also in terms of the content of the speakers and how you plan your service. So I don't think that videoing, I know that this lockdown has caused people to have to change quite quickly and adapt to the new way of doing things. But I think that when the lockdown starts to subside and things start to get back to normal, even though I believe that's going to take a few months to do that, I think that any church that's had to rush and do that, I think that, you know, when things start to get back to normal, I think it's good to take a step back and reflect quite deeply on what you're doing and connect with people who understand about video and put in online services together, because, you know, people are going to judge you, or not judge you, but people are going to attend your online service dependent on how it looks and the content of your service. Because you got to remember, today's believer or prospective believer is very different from back in the day when I was a teenager, or maybe back in the day when you was a teenager, because I'm assuming that some of you online are much younger than myself. Excuse me a minute, I'm just putting in, the power's running out. You were right, Jenny. Power's running out quite quickly. So just putting the power in. Is there any questions? No questions?
Yes. In terms of the live broadcasting, live services, is there any training on that, like with the YouTube live streaming or Facebook live streaming? Is there any training on that, or any media teams that we can contact about that?
Well, because you did initially ask me that question, didn't you, today? So I had a chat with a friend of mine who used to be a former BBC producer. So I spoke to him about potentially putting on another workshop where I get an expert, not me, unfortunately, I don't really know that much about cameras and stuff like that, but I actually get an expert to come and talk about equipment, you know, how you kind of log in on, how you set up your YouTube account or Facebook account to do live broadcasts and stuff like that, and even get them to talk a little bit about the kind of cameras that you should be thinking about getting to do that and stuff. I don't know if that's something that you would value, or I could, after this, I can give the details of somebody that you could actually speak to, because it's, you know, it gets quite techie. So I just use my phone and I've got no understanding, but if you're quite serious about doing that, then I think it's worthwhile talking to a professional. So I'm quite happy to kind of hook you up or put on something where I sort of like share some information about that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Right, online services. I'm just going to touch on that because it's not an area of expertise for me. I just know that I visited a couple of churches. Most of the time when I visited them, I visit them via social media. I know that some people are hosting events via Zoom meetings. I've been in my church, we have our Bible study. Actually, I'm doing a Bible study course. So we have our Bible study lessons on a Zoom meeting, on the conference, on the Zoom meeting. I know that my mum, her church, they've managed to set up a service on a conference call. So every Sunday, my mum has a service on a conference call, but my mum's church that she goes to, there's a lot of people that are over 60. So I'm just going to make the assumption that maybe a lot of them don't have laptops or tablets and stuff like that. So that particular church felt the best way to reach their members and provide some spiritual sustenance for them was to have conference calls and stuff. And it seems to be going very well. But I've been visiting my own church. I've occasionally visited a church called the Tab, which is based in Lewisham. And then I've got my other online congregation. Yes, some of us, we have online congregations. Other churches we visit is a church called the Elevation Church, which is run by a guy called Steve Furtick. I just love his messages. And obviously I visit Bishop T.D. Jakes. I'm a great fan of that man. And then when I watch TV, because I still watch TV, but increasingly I'm told that millennials do not watch TV. I do watch, who do I like? I like Pastor Matthew. I do watch him. Anyway, right. PR, it's talking about PR. Media relations, which is entails getting stories about what you do in newspapers, or getting interviews on radio. Was someone want to ask me something?
Sorry, yeah. Going back, I was trying to get the light, what you went on quickly. Going back to what you said earlier on, that you use the zone because your church and your mom used the conference.
Cool, yeah.
I've got a mixture at the moment, and I'm struggling to try and amalgamate the group. Where some, as you said, haven't got a laptop or probably the cell phone to be able to accommodate that. Now, what recommendation would you give, and how would you encourage if you got 3/4 of your audience is the elder, and they're quite comfortable in picking up the phone and talk to their friends, but to actually come on the phone and have service is difficult.
Is that what you're finding?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm finding that we're having part Zoom, which the one or happened that the new technology, and the older ones, you know, they've lost interest. Even one or two of the younger ones have no interest at all. I'm not interested in social media. How can I promote it to them, and how can I help?
Right. Okay. So is your church a big church, a small church?
It's a small church, and that's it also, you know, it's on my heart to say it's not a big church, and I'm concerned about losing people on the way, because if you just carry on with one type, then they may fall back.
So you've got elderly people that you're finding it difficult to engage, get them to engage on the phone. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Have you asked them why they don't want to do the phone stuff?
Well, I think as you notice on the phone, you've got to be very disciplined, wherein which you've got to put your phone on mute. And
right. Okay.
When they are singing, it's you can't really sing along because it's out of tune, in other words. And the older ones are used to singing in church and they're interacting, doing things. They don't seem to get that feeling of being in church. Is very limited. So
right. Okay.
Come on to say, okay, I come on once, one of the service, but the rest of the main service, they don't seem to want to involved. And then you get the younger ones, one or two of the younger ones who just don't want to know at all. And so I just thought I'll throw that in.
Okay, that's a unique problem. Maybe what you, as you're the pastor, right?
Yes.
Maybe what you might need to do initially is just have phone up each of your members to just find out where they're at spiritually. I mean, why are they not interested in engaging? Maybe that's a question you need to ask them.
Yeah, okay, yes. And the next step?
Well, once you get the answer from them, then it will give you the information that you need to move forward. Because I can't say whatever, because they might be saying, well, you know, I don't feel connected on when I phone, or I find it difficult to use, or I don't know. I can't think of reasons at the moment. Maybe they just need to be spiritually encouraged. Maybe they don't feel part of the fellowship. You know, my mum's church. What's really nice about my mum's church that I've noted is that they constantly call each other. They've built a little community, and maybe sometimes because people are not meeting together outside of the actual church service, they don't feel that connected. Maybe they do, and I'm just making the wrong assumption. But it's good to have a conversation with them, and even with your young people. Why don't your young people want to even get online? Or are they going to another service and watching that service?
Well, there's a mixture there, but I hear what you're saying, and that's what I plan to do, was to have a one-to-one with each, and to establish what is the reason why. And I think probably the greatest challenge at the moment is because 3/4 of the church are family orientated. You know, they're a big family, so they interact quite a lot amongst themselves.
Oh, I see. Okay.
See? And it's very hard to build confidence, because I find that some of the brethren don't really get on or have the confidence in each other to share. And if you can't share and have that confidence, you know, amongst yourself, then it's hard. And I'm trying to find out, how can I break down that barrier, that wall, for them to be able to say trust, you know? And it's harder now because they don't meet. So you don't really know what happened to one side. Well, I do, but the rest of the brethren may not know, because I make it my duty to get on the phone to them and establish that. So what I'm saying, could I, after establishing what I know really what the problem is to some of them, if I choose to do the phone only, that means the others who are the younger ones who are more prone to the new media, social media, they might feel a little bit, you know, reluctant to say that's boring.
Possibly. I mean, yeah, possibly. If you've got really, you know, people that are over 60 and then you've got people that are 20, it's like, you know, how do you help them to meet in terms of putting on a worship event or a church service via online that meets the need of both? Maybe you might have to think about having two different activities for them. I don't know. Before I move on, has anyone got any suggestions? Because I'm not a pastor.
Oh, hi there. I've just been listening to the conversation, and obviously different people have different needs. And in our church, when we started our Zoom services, we noticed there was quite a few people that hadn't sort of been a part of it. And when we got in contact with them, either their phone or whatever they're using, the tool that they're using isn't up to date. And although we might send them a Zoom invite, they don't know what a Zoom invite is. They don't, when it says click, like you sent a message out saying, if you haven't got Zoom, you need to download it. I got in contact with a few people. I explained to them how to download it. They didn't even know where the Play Store was on their phone. So I had to do a pictorial thing via WhatsApp. This is the Play Store. This is what, just write Zoom. And this is the picture that you will see. Click on it, install it. And I had to talk them through it like that. And that was people that I wouldn't say they were that old. But so some people, like you said, you're not a techie person. So you just shy away from those things if you don't really know how they operate. And then, and on top of that, there's different people have different needs and different ways of communicating. So they gravitate to whatever they feel comfortable with. That's just my take on it. But I think one of the key things, as you mentioned, is you need to get in contact with each of them individually and let them know that you still care, that you're still here, you're still part of the membership, and we really want to engage with you. What can we do to help you?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I don't want to take up your time.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Joan. Thank you. Okay, I hope that helped you, Pastor Claudette.
Yes, thank you. It's nice to know that somebody else are actually experience the same thing. You're not alone. So thank you, Pastor Joan, for that. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. That's good. We're here to help and support each other. So there's traditional, there's the media. So media relations, you know, if you have a church, you know, there might be instances where it might be worthwhile seeing if you can get a story about what you do in some media outlet. And why it's good to do that is that it just helps to shine a spotlight on what you're doing. It helps the wider community know that, you know, you're not just a church or a ministry just there taking up space or whatever, but you're doing things and having a positive impact on other people's lives. I remember when at KICC, when they got all the media coverage back in 1998, it created such a buzz amongst the congregants. You know, they just felt excited that, you know, they were people of faith and people were reading about how this church was making a difference in their lives and how trusting in God and serving the Lord was impacting their lives. And they were really excited. And even with me at the Ark, you know, our young people, particularly the younger people, but just in general, you know, our building has been renovated. It's brought new life to the congregation. And when you're part of a growing church and you see what God is doing in other people's lives, it just generates a lot of excitement. You know, I don't know if any of you recall the story of the disciples when they got sent out. Jesus sent them out to heal and to preach the gospel, and they came back and they were really excited that God had used them to heal and stuff like that. It's you know, when you get a story in the newspaper, or you see your church growing, or you put on a ministry initiative and it's really successful, you just get excited because you just think, oh, I'm making an impact for the world. I'm making an impact in this world, in my community, for the Lord. So the kind of stories that the media would could be interested in is like historic things. You know, if an individual is the first person, I'm just saying this off the top of my head, you know, the first person to go to the moon, or you're putting on the first ever conference aimed at I don't know, young people in care or something. I'm just saying it off the top of my head. You know, local media, they like stories about anniversaries. You know, is your charity or your church celebrating its 10th anniversary, 20th anniversary, 25th, 30, 35, 40, 50, 60th, 70th. They like stories with involving children or people that are very old that achieve really great things. So I recently done some work with this young boy who's my godson actually, and he wrote a book about his mum. His mother had cancer, and he wrote a book called Mummy, Cancer and Me. And I got a story about him in the local media because I think he was about 10 when he wrote the story, so he's young. And I also got BBC Songs of Praise interviewed him, you know, because it was a story about a young guy. Anyone who's watching the media, the whole thing about COVID, you will have seen the story of that 99-year-old guy who's raised millions of pounds for the NHS by walking 100 times up and down his garden. You know, it's a good story. COVID, NHS, really old guy, showing that, you know, you can be old and still make a difference and still be charitable and stuff like that. Launches of community initiatives are good to generate publicity. If you've got a project that is helping vulnerable people in the community, you know, the media likes those kind of stories. If you're putting on a special event, media again like those stories. If you've got an interesting testimony or you've achieved something great, that's also a good, you know, you can approach the media with that. Or you've got some quirky story, and I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but I can't at this present moment in time. But, you know, there's loads of things that you can be getting into the media with. And there's the publication that I mentioned called Keep the Faith magazine. They're always on the lookout for stories of people doing great things, interesting things within the faith community. So it's always worth thinking about and sending them a story for them to cover. And the Voice newspaper as well. It's always looking for good ethnic stories, always looking for interesting testimonies of how God has transformed people's lives, or people that are working on interesting initiatives that are making a difference. I remember some time ago, I actually interviewed Joan Myers, who's on this Zoom meeting, because she has got a charity, running a charity in Kenya, where she helps to provide education for young people in that country. I mean, great story, interesting story. People always want to hear about what Christians are doing to help people that are vulnerable or disadvantaged. I enjoyed doing that story. It was a good story. So people, we're all, newspapers, media are always on the lookout for good stories. You know, we've got Premier Radio, we've got Premier Gospel. They're always looking out for interviewees. They're interested in knowing what is happening in the community and shining a spotlight on them. So when you're doing what you're doing and making your PR plan, you know, think deeply as to whether or not, you know, what you're doing merits getting media coverage, and make attempts to get that. In terms of getting your story in the media, say for instance, I'm going to use Keep the Faith as an example, but you could use London Tonight or maybe some national newspaper. You know, getting a story in the media entails what's called making a pitch or sending a press release to your selected media. So for instance, you know, you might be raising funds to finance the education of 200 young people from the township of South Africa. And you might want to do a story on that. You would, you know, write a pitch, which would be just an outline of what you're planning to do and why you're planning to do it. And you might decide to send that to Premier Radio, for instance. So you would find out the email address of the news editor and send them the pitch, or you might write a press release which kind of outlines your story, and then you would send it to them. You'd make a follow-up phone call or email to check that they've received your press release, and then you'd ask them whether or not they'd be interested in doing a story. Hopefully they'll say yes. That isn't the greatest example of a story, but that was the first thing that came to my head, unfortunately.
I noticed that you included that in your PR strategy to send a press release to these various places you mentioned, BBC Radio, London, and a few others as well. Do you have a list of the contacts there? Because that's not always so obvious on their website.
Yes, I do, but that's trade secrets, you see. So what I do in terms of my work, if somebody's got a press release that they want to get sent out and stuff like that, that's a service that I actually provide. But what you can do, a lot of what you'll find is that a lot of journalists are on Twitter. Some of the BBC addresses, they normally have what's called a planning desk. So if you go to the BBC website and you go on to, for instance, the London section, they would have an email address on that section. And then some of the journalists, like for instance, people like Dotun Adebayo, you know, normally for journalists at the BBC, it's quite standard in terms of their email address, which is their first name, full stop, their surname @bbc.co.uk. Right, I'm going to just use a case study of Street Pastors, which is a client that I worked on when they were first launched in 2003. Street Pastors was founded in 2003 by Les Isaacs, Reverend Les Isaacs, Reverend David Shoshanya, and PC Ian Critchlow. And they decided to form this charity which would provide which would put pastors on the streets to provide pastoral support to at-risk and vulnerable and young people involved in criminal activities. So I was there at the inception when these three guys met at Reverend Les Isaacs' house to discuss how they would respond to the whole thing about gun crime, which was kind of prevalent in 2003. And they decided on Street Pastors. So I volunteered to work for them because I really was concerned about the issue and I wanted to make a difference in terms of supporting a church initiative that was looking to deal with that particular issue. And all I did was just send out information to the media. So I sent out press releases to the media. It was predominantly to religious media and regional media, that's London media. And because the issue was such a prevalent, important issue, they actually ran with the story. So from the time that Street Pastors held their very first meeting to make an appeal for people from within the church to become street pastors, the whole thing was given media coverage. And they followed Street Pastors from when they took on their first set of trainees until they went out on the streets for the first time, which was in June 2003. And since then, the media coverage helped greatly to grow Street Pastors in those early years. So now it's one of the largest ministries founded by a member of the Black Christian community. There are 14,500 street pastors based across the UK. They are based in...
I'm a street pastor.
Who's that? Who
worldwide.
said that?
Joan.
Oh, you're street pastor as well. Wow.
I was a street pastor up until 2014, from 2009 until 2014.
Okay, for 5 years. That's great.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Really, really good. So they're now based in 250 towns and cities across the UK, and they're also based internationally in countries like Nigeria, Australia, America, Jamaica, Antigua and Barbuda, Gibraltar, Ireland, and many more. And street pastors are a really good example of a ministry, because they're not a church, or they could be called a parachurch organization or a charity, that has grown from a small seed into a massive tree that's got roots everywhere. And their growth was helped predominantly by media coverage. So media can play a really great part in, really great role in terms of, for churches or ministries that want to have an impact in terms of growing, raising awareness of what they do, attracting people to become part of their ministry or charity. Media coverage really does make a major difference. So I've just kind of done this hypothetical thing of what a church ministry PR plan for growth could possibly look like. And please interchange the word church with ministry, yeah? So first and foremost, you've got to have a vision. You set out your vision. You pray into that vision. Like I said earlier, I think prayer should undergird everything, you know. You would speak to your church members. If you're a ministry and you've got a couple of people that are supporting you, you would talk to them about the vision. You would talk to a church or somebody who runs a ministry who has been where you would like to see your ministry or church go. I remember I was told Pastor Matthew, when he came here in his early years in the UK, he used to go along to a church that I used to attend called Mile End New Testament Church of God. And what was different about Mile End at the time, I was in my 20s at the time, was that it was one of the few churches that were allowing young people to kind of be, inverted commas, trendy and wear makeup and jewelry and all that kind of stuff. And the pastor, Reverend Joel Edwards, who went on to become head of the Evangelical Alliance, was a great preacher. So Pastor Matthew used to come and say he sat in the corner, I never noticed him, and just listen to the messages and stuff. And because New T exhibited some of the qualities that he wanted his own church to have, even though the New T church was not that big. So, you know, talk to somebody who runs a church or a ministry that has been where you want to go. Look at the ways in which possibly you might have to improve your church service or your ministry in order to attract more people. This would be part of your PR plan for growth. Preach, you know, whoever delivers most of the messages, is their delivery good? Is the content good? Does that need to be improved? What's the music like? Is the music good? What's the actual fellowship like? Is it welcoming? Is it friendly? You know, if somebody comes, would they come back, or would they come and feel that they weren't really greeted properly? I know at the Ark, there was a point like for about 6 weeks that every week, somebody from the platform would talk about how important it was to be friendly to visitors. You know, because if you're going to grow a church, grow a ministry, everybody's got to be involved, because, you know, when people come into a church or a ministry, you want them to feel loved and cared for. A pastor, the preacher, cannot do it all by himself. Bookie. Right. Let me find you.
Hi, yeah.
Okay.
Hi,
Yeah.
hi, Marcia. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Just a quick question. So some of the points you have on here, I just was wondering, how are we adapting that now for post-COVID, for example? You know, like if you want to run a community service, and people don't feel comfortable gathering in a place, etc., are we just adapting that to online? And is it the same principles that will apply?
Sorry, let me go back. Sorry, say that again for me, please.
So a couple of points on this slide, particularly talking about kick off start of the vision with a bang, and consider the community service aspect. How are we adapting that to not having necessarily physical meetings, or how can we adapt that to?
You can still have a bang online, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
In terms of your publicity, your presence, you know, because like I said, social media is like the new town square, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you can say, for instance, you know, you're gonna kick off you're gonna have an online service. You can still produce your publicity materials.
Mm-hmm.
You can still produce a video to advertise it.
Yeah.
When you're doing your adverts or your promo, you will tell people what time you're going to be online.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to tell them where you're going to be online. I mean, what I've noticed with the publicity, people say to people, we are going to be, you know, say for instance, it's a church service. Yeah. It says where you can view it. It can be viewed on YouTube, on Facebook, on the website, on a webinar or whatever, or on Zoom, and they tell you what time you can actually log on. So you can make a big bang on
great stuff.
online. You know, you can make a big bang anywhere. You know.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that help?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
And even if when you preach online, I know that we're all online, and I'm kind of not focusing too much online. I'm focusing when we get offline. But even online, you know, you go to a service, if the preaching is boring, you're not staying. Do you understand what I mean? So a lot of what the principles for offline apply online, and online it's even more because you're not in a physical place, because the atmosphere makes a difference. Whoever is doing the preaching or the music, you've got to help create the atmosphere. Do you understand what I mean? Because people are watching what you're doing. They're participating, but it's not in the same kind of way, because we're singing away by ourselves in front of a computer screen. So you have to up the energy even more. So I don't know if any of you have watched, sorry, I'm a TD Jakes fan, as I said. So he's preaching, he's got this, you know, 15,000 seater church, and he's preaching to nobody. But the energy level that he's given off is still very strong. So do you understand what I mean? So, yeah. So, you know, in terms of your PR plan for growth, do you need to upgrade your website, your publicity materials that you have?
So I'm working, because I'm starting something new. So I'm working on all of that at the moment. And so kickoff is quite relevant for me. And I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to do that?
Oh, right. Okay.
In this COVID days.
So what is it you're working on? Or you can't say?
I can say.
Oh, right, okay.
I can say. So it's a new business, and it's lifestyle medicine.
Okay. Very important.
Health and wellness and it's for a specific niche. So midlife. So
right, okay.
Women, yeah.
Well, you know what, sadly, what's come through with regards to COVID is the fact that Black people are being disproportionately affected by COVID. And it's been said that it's due to a lot of underlying health conditions. So obviously people's focus at the moment is all about some people's focus is on how can we improve the health and fitness and wellness of BME communities. So, you know, it's an opportune time because people's minds are fixed on how can I stay alive and not get COVID. Yeah. And when they overcome that, you know, what do I need to do in order to improve my health and fitness? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So it's good to have a look at sorry, this computer is too sensitive. So I keep, oh laddie. Oh, there I am. Don't need to see me. Right, let me go back. Have you got social media accounts? Review your strategy, you know, how are you connecting? Are you engaging well with people? Do you need to implement a new strategy?
Yes. Yes.
If you're a ministry or you're even a church, you know, what the services on offer, what are you offering? Are they being utilized? Do you need to tweak them? Do you need to change them? And it's important, whatever your strategy looks like, that you review, as you're implementing it, you're constantly reviewing it, either on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. Sometimes when I'm doing, when I'm implementing a PR plan to promote my events and my tickets are not selling, I review it and I change it, because I've got to change, I've got to sell my tickets and stuff. And the same if I'm working with anybody that I'm working with, you know, you review the strategy. You've got to review the strategy, because sometimes, you know, you think of something great, but when you're actually implementing it, it comes to naught. So I always say, you know, implement and review what you're doing. It's very important. So moving forward with PR, decide what your key aims and objectives are in terms of being a church or a ministry or even a business. And as I've got some business people here, write out your PR strategy. I hope that the proposal that I sent you gives you a rough idea of how you should write out your strategy. I do believe that in this day and age, I just believe that everyone should be on social media, but that's just me. Post regularly and strategically. I think it's important that you ensure that your visual imagery, that's your logo, your website, your business cards, your leaflets and photos, that they are on point. We live in a very visual age. You know, if people don't like the image that you're presenting to them, I'm talking about in terms of your logos and stuff, you know, they're not going to stay with you. I think we live in an age where people are into video. I think it's important for people to think deeply about how they can utilize video in promoting what they do and stuff, promoting what they do, whether it's their church or their ministry. I mean, you know, at the Ark, we've got, like I said, we've got loads of young people. We use video a lot. You know, they will interview young people, get them to share, and older people too, get them to share their testimonies and their stories. You know, people love stories. That's how most people connect with the gospel. You know, the gospel is, you know, God's love story for the world and stuff. And we've got to find imaginative ways to convey to people, one, that God loves them and how people's lives are transformed by God's love. And videos are a good way of doing that. I think it's important to network, because you can learn so much when you network, particularly as church leaders and people who run ministries. The Bible says iron sharpens iron. So when you meet with people, network with people who've been where you want to go or who are where you would like to be, you can only but learn from them, be encouraged by them and inspired by them to know that you can achieve what they've achieved. And I think it's important to regularly review and refine your strategy. And I'm going to go back to what that guy, Tommy Bennett, said: dream big, dream large. Well, he didn't say this, but it's a quote and I like it. Dream big, dream large, dream in color. You know, we serve a big God. You know, he calls us to step out in faith. He wants the world to be saved, and he's called us to play a part in doing that. So he wants us to have faith that he will equip us with what we need in order to achieve that. So dream big. We serve a big God. You can do PR on a budget. I do it all the time. You know, the clients that I've worked with, and some of the clients I've worked with, they don't have big budgets, but we get good results. I don't know if some of you are aware, but there's places where you can set up websites for free. There's places where you can write blogs for free. I know people who've built their businesses, and some have built ministries through their blogs, just writing blogs. You can make videos, decent videos on your smartphone. I've actually done interviews for YouTube channels where they've used smartphones to film it, and the quality has been very good. You can utilize free online tools to create leaflets, publicity materials. I use canva.com. They've got really good templates that you can use for all kinds of publicity materials, brochures, newsletters, the lot. You can get those on your computers as well. I've got a Mac and it's got templates for newsletters. If you need promotional stuff done, like leaflet designs and cartoons and stuff, visit fiverr.co.uk. I put here join business clubs. I should have taken that out, forgive me. But you know, if you're a Christian and you run a church, it's worthwhile joining organizations like the Evangelical Alliance, that is a representative body for evangelical churches and organizations and stuff.
And Marcia, I would say attending the Destined to Soar breakfasts are a good place to network as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that plug. Yeah, but I think it's really important for Christians to network, because, you know, in networking, you learn from other people and you can build relationships, and, you know, they can help you get to the next level. My business can help you with the following. I can help you devise and implement PR strategies, give you assistance with promotional campaigns, help you reach new audiences, write press releases, provide media consultancy, help you with events, help you to grow your ministries. And lastly, I would say thank you for joining me, and thank you to Just Tickets, because I've used their Zoom platform, and I use their platform to sell tickets also. And thank you for staying with me for an hour and a half, I think. Is there any questions out there?
Yeah, how do I get a video team?
A video team?
Yeah.
Okay. Your church, is it small? Is it big? What?
Oh.
Small. How small is small?
Around 10, about the same size as the Apostles.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. 12 disciples changed the world, you know. Do you think that your church is, do you want to implement your video team now, or do you think it's something that you'd like to work towards?
Both, to represent each department.
I think that you should, I mean, it depends on what your budget is, because maybe it would be better to start it off in-house, or just get one person who can help you to show you the ropes.
That's what's saying, the training.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. I'd have to dig to find out where you could get the training.
Okay.
Yeah, I can dig to find out where you can get training, because there's people who do that.
Sorry, there's someone online I know. I think he's got some free training at the moment. He's ex-BBC as well, and quite good.
All right, who's that?
His name is Neil Ben. Let me just quickly look for his link and share it in here, if you don't mind.
Okay, no problem. No problem. You can share it in the chat.
If it will help, because I actually downloaded the course recently. And
all right. Is it an online course?
Yes. So he has some paid stuff, but I think because of COVID, he just thought, you know what, I think it's old and he's transitioned into something new, but it's still useful information. And for someone that just wants to implement video on their own, it could prove useful. Let me go and look for him and come back and pop it in the chat for people if they want.
I've just seen in the chat that our slides available. It was too fast to write out everything. I don't really make the slides available, but this is being recorded. So if you want to access the recording, I'm quite happy for you to do that, so you can listen again at your own pace.
Hi, Marcia. It's Pastor Matthew here.
Oh, Pastor Matthew, what are you doing on my Zoom? No, I'm joking.
No, only because you kept mentioning Pastor Matthew, I thought I'd just put that in. I just really wanted to really thank you. I've really learned a lot. I'm a big listener, and I just wanted to know, are you going to do a follow-up as well of this conference? It would be really nice to have a follow-up.
Follow-up in what sense?
In terms of, you know, what have we actually applied? What have we achieved from your first conference? You know, maybe.
Oh, right, okay. What's the name of your church?
CFCM, Chosen for Christ Ministries.
I'm sure I've heard of you. Where are you based?
Sister Sarah's my sister.
Sister Sarah
Williams, director.
Oh, oh right. Oh, it's I've interviewed your mum, haven't I?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Our 50th celebration should be coming up soon.
Right. When's that going to be?
So, Sister Sarah would tell you all the dates.
I mean, if you're going to be celebrating your 50th, I mean, that's a great story. I mean, you know, I interviewed your mum. She founded the church. I memean, they'd love. I'm sure that would make a really great story.
Yeah, and the ministry's been handed over to me, so you know, yeah. So it's really been really an eye opener.
All right.
Honestly, God is doing some great things.
How are you finding it?
Wonderful. You know, the challenge. I've seen my mother in ministry. I've seen what she's gone through, and you know, it's food for thought, and it's taught me so much to really take it to the next level. So yeah.
I think that, you know, it's exciting being a church. It's exciting being a church leader and stuff, in the sense that, you know, particularly if you've kind of taken over, because it gives you an opportunity to do new things and take the church in a not so much new direction, but take it in a new direction. You know, it's you know, the world is your oyster kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, I followed you on Instagram, so hopefully you could check me out.
Okay, all right then. What, you just followed me right now?
Today,
all
yeah.
Right, okay, I'll follow you then. I'll follow you back.
Okay.
This is what we do on social media. If somebody follows us, we follow them back. Yeah, it's good. It's good. How many people go to your church now? Because I have been there quite a few.
Yeah, so I've God has really been good, because the time that when I was ordained, the Holy Spirit gave me a prophecy that I was gonna, you know, have an international ministry. So not only the two churches that I have that we have, which is in Hanwell and one in Downsview, also got a very large ministry in India, 150 pastors.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, so you know, God is really doing something. I mean, I've been in the sort of IT industry for a very long time, project management as well, and you know, so I understand a lot of the things that you said, but it's really just put things together in perspective of what you've been saying. It's just been wonderful hearing your wealth of knowledge.
Okay, well, you won't have no problem putting with the techie stuff then, will you? Anyone else got any questions?
Yeah, can I say I enjoy the course. It's different from what I was expecting. I thought I was going to have a training in how to use a Zoom and things like that. That was the impression that I got, but I've learned a lot from what you have said. And regarding our churches, we're not as fortunate yet as Pastor Matthew, what is gathering has actually increased, and he's going to take over from his mom, which is excellent. But I love the way you talk about using the media, and I've really got a vision. As you're talking, I've got a vision in my mind what I'm going to use. But can I just ask you one question? When we have when we've got a small church, well, I've got a small church, and you haven't got the people with a qualification, or they may have some of the brethren that are there, but they're not available. Would you be able to assist Marcia could I come back to you to say, this is what I'd like to do? I know you're going to charge because it's for your service. Could you connect me to somebody else? Because sometimes it's nice to have outsiders because they can see differently, to be able to move on and expand the church and to get engaged. Because if we haven't got the new technology, like, as you said, people come into church, they view, and straight away they say, oh, it's a bit old fashioned. I want to see video. I want to see everything online or whatever, you know, the name of the service. And as you go along, to follow through to know what's going on. How would I be able to obtain that and to encourage some of the others who haven't got that technology knowledge to plug in and to be able, I mean, I've done a little course myself and can do a little bit on the computer, but I'd like to have greater knowledge of that, and somebody who are willing to have the time to spend, and even with the young people to give them that opportunity.
Well, I'm happy to have a conversation with you after, tomorrow, next week or whatever, just to kind of talk a bit more in depth and maybe point you in the direction where you can get help. I do know that somebody, a colleague of mine, Claudine Reed, she's going to be hosting a Zoom workshop teaching people how to use Zoom. You can get the tickets on the Just Ticket platform if you're interested. But I'm quite happy to have a conversation with you if you want.
Okay.
So feel free to call me, email me or whatever, and we can get that in motion. Because I'm here, I see myself as someone God has enabled to have a lot of experience working around the church. And if I'm able to use my experience and knowledge to help people build thriving churches, then I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, that was really good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to
hello.
reach out to you, Marcia, if possible.
Okay, no problem. Jenny's
I
got
actually thought this session was about learning how to use Zoom.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, for some reason, I had this thing. I'm going to learn now all the ins and outs of Zoom and how to do the backdrop and everything.
Yeah,
I
I did as well.
That's not me, mate.
Oh,
Jenny,
I don't know where they got the idea from.
Jenny had her hand up, and I'm trying to find out how I can.
And me too.
Who's me? Oh, Ronnie.
Ronnie, yeah.
Okay, I can hear you. I can't hear Jenny. Let me unmute Jenny. All right, Jenny, you could talk, and then Ronnie, I'll hear your question.
It was just to say thank you so much, Marcia. I think the timing of the course is really apt because of the condition that we're in at the moment. And I think even when lockdown lifts, I think church will not be church as usual. It's going to be very different because people's shift has now gone onto social media and church has gone online. So I think when people go back into a building, their view and concept of how church is going to be outlined, I think it's going to be different now. It's going to change. Yeah. But I just want to thank you for highlighting a lot of things in your course. It was really, really, really good. And I think the challenge for us now is to really, it's important for churches now, or people with ministries or businesses, you have to be online. There's no choice about it. There's no second guessing it. You have to be online, and your course has been really informative. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. And Ronnie?
Hi, Marcia. I just want to, you mentioned that there's going to be tapes of this meeting. How do we get copies?
Well, if you would like, what I will do when it's available, I will send you the link for where you can watch it. Not a problem.
Okay, please, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All of us, Marcia, that's on the line tonight. You send us the link.
Okay, then, no problem.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay, no problem. Well, if there's no more questions, I can finish 13 minutes earlier than what was expected. I'm joking. But if there's any more...
Thank you very much. I have to go now anyway, but thanks, that was really helpful.
All right. Well, I hope
Bless
that
you.
before you all go, I'm just praying and hoping that you will all start thinking about how you can all use PR to grow and develop what you do, whether it's a ministry or a church, because, you know, there's people out there that either need to hear the gospel that's going to be preached through you or need to experience the ministry that God has birthed in you. So, yeah, put it to good use.
Thank you.
Can I just ask everyone to, can we just pray a blessing on Sister Marcia, as we've received from her, you know, like, you know, she's poured out. If we could just pour back into her right now, if we could